Things are going from bad to worse over in China for traditional automakers. The Chinese automakers are rising and joining together to demolish and eradicate traditional OEMs. Let's get into it. Over at Reuters, BYD calls on Chinese automakers to unite, demolish the old and global push. They want to snuff out the already floundering as of lately. We'll talk about all the details today, but they want to snuff out all the traditional automakers as best as possible for the rise of Chinese autos. I'm a little out of breath. I was just working out, but this news is so exciting that I got to get to it. The writing's been on the wall for about a year now. If we go back to the top 10 best retailing Chinese automakers in August of 2022, BYD already beat out Volkswagen. Volkswagen's been the number one automaker there for I don't even know how many years at this point, but that's no longer the case. BYD has risen past Volkswagen, both of their joint ventures with FAW and SAIC. And look at this insane amount of growth, 153% year over year. That is out of this world. If we go to the Financial Times, can Volkswagen win back China? And the answer is, I don't think so. And the big reason is, not only for Volkswagen, but all the traditional OEMs, they cannot keep up with plug-in hybrid and, more importantly, battery electric vehicles in the Chinese market. Even though Volkswagen is in the second and third place in terms of total volume sold, they're in ninth place of electric vehicle market share with just 2% of the market share. BYD has 40% of the EV market share. Tesla has 10% in second place. And here's what's insane. China overtook Germany in auto exports in 2022, and it is set to eclipse Japan as the world's biggest auto exporter this year. Well, that's already happened. If we go to Nikkei Asia, China surpasses Japan as the world's top auto exporter. This was in May, so just a couple months ago now. And they did it in the first quarter of 2023. Spurred on by rising demand for electric vehicles and increased deliveries to Russia. All the Japanese and Korean automakers pulled out of Russia due to obvious reasons. But we know China and Russia are the best of allies, and they are snapping up in Russia anything that they can get from China so they have cars there. And China's automobile exports for January through March period jumped 58% from a year earlier to over 1 million units, and that's just one quarter, so they might be able to export 4 million units or more by the end of this year. Japan exported 950,000 vehicles during the first quarter in comparison, which is up 6% on the year, but it's not 58% like we see from the Chinese exports. And if you remember a couple weeks back, Nissan's doing so bad in China that they have to start exporting their excess vehicles there that the domestic market isn't buying. For Nissan's partner Mitsubishi, things are worse. They've actually shut down the plants completely because they don't know what's going to happen to them the rest of the year. Toyota, who's the most stable of all the Japanese automakers, is still down 2 to 3% in China this year. They have laid off 1,000 people in China so far this year due to a lack of Toyota demand in China. Now, what about General Motors, right? They're number 4. Well, they've delivered over 500,000 vehicles in China for the second quarter, which was up 9% from a year earlier. So they're one of the few traditional automakers that is doing somewhat well. Not as well as the startups or BYD for that matter, or probably Tesla as well. But compared to the rest of the automakers that are traditional, seems to be doing the best. So let's get back to this breaking news. BYD calling on other Chinese automakers to unite to demolish the old. BYD founder Wang Shangfu, I could be butchering that, he says, "I believe the time has come for Chinese brands," standing in front of the image of the 12 logos of 12 major Chinese automakers. He says it's an emotional need for the 1.4 billion Chinese people to see a Chinese brand becoming global. Speaking of their global influence, BYD is taking over the old Brazilian Ford plant to build EVs for South America. They're going to be selling EVs in the Philippines. They're going to expand into Egypt. Bloomberg is saying Chinese EVs are now cheaper than gasoline cars. And BYD in Sweden, check this out. Okay, this is pretty big news for me. I haven't heard this one. Sweden's July auto market saw plug-in EVs take up 60% of the share, up from 50%. And look at the top vehicle here. It's not Volkswagen, which is not that far from Sweden. At least, Germany's not. But the BYD Atto 3 import from China, 721 EVs for July in the country of Sweden. They continue to spread their dominance, not only in China, but markets outside of China. BYD calling out the rest of the Chinese automakers is right after BYD reaches 5 million EV milestone. I think they're even ahead of Tesla if you include their plug-in hybrids for 5 million EVs. Okay, yes, and they even have, so BYD doesn't have any cars in America yet. They have buses though, and they're talking about their buses in the UK and parts of Europe as well. They also have buses and EVs hitting the Japanese market where it hurts the most, trying to soak up any sort of interest in EVs in Japan, which is much lower than most other parts of the world. I should say, first world country parts of the world, EVs just don't do that well in Japan for all sorts of reasons. But there's over 600,000 BYD employees as well. You know, their Blade batteries are some of the best on the market. They have LFP technology, which is not combustible, it's safe, and they keep improving that technology to reduce costs to make their vehicles more affordable and desirable as well. And under the slogan, Chinese Autos, he is challenging Chinese automakers to demolish the old legends and achieve new world-class brands. Now, while we don't get any BYDs anytime soon here, BYD has spoken recently in the past year saying North America is not a piece of the pie that they want to take a bite out of quite yet. However, we do get Geely vehicles in the form of Volvos and Polestars. And even the upcoming Lincoln Nautilus is going to be imported from China. So how are these automakers getting around the 25 to 27% import tax on Chinese-built vehicles that are brought into America? This was a big wake-up call for me because Volvo's overcoming, and therefore Polestar in the future as well, they're overcoming U.S. tariffs on vehicles made in China using the U.S. duty drawback program. The drawback program allows businesses to claim a refund on duties and U.S. tariffs on imports from China when offset by certain exports in the same tariff classification. Automakers with U.S. manufacturing that can create export opportunities can recoup import duties paid on vehicles in the past 5 years. That can result in tens of millions of dollars returning to the company's bottom line. General Motors also imports vehicles from China to the United States, such as the Buick Envision, and they take advantage of the drawback program so they don't have to pay tariffs on it. Volvo is going to be taking advantage of this as well. We know about their new EX30, their small, affordable-ish, $35,000 to $40,000 starting price for their very fast and I would say one of the more exciting EVs to hit our market. It's only being built in China, and that will be coming sometime next year. Polestar 2, I think it might have been the only Chinese vehicle I've reviewed here on the channel. But since Volvo and Polestar are or will be building vehicles here in the United States, they can get around the import tax. Volvo says that the cars that they produce there in South Carolina that we export help us to import the cars that we don't produce here. It is impossible to build each and every model that you have in your portfolio in each and every region. I totally get it. And I think this is just the beginning for Chinese vehicles to make their way into the United States. They'll never be the majority, I don't think, right? Because there has to be a trade-off to circumvent or step around that import tariff. But we're also going to see an influx of more and more Chinese-made vehicles into the United States. And I don't think it's going to end with Lincoln, General Motors, Volvo, Polestar. That's just the beginning. I think the influx is going to keep coming, and it could even come from Japanese automakers. That's the insane thing. They have joint ventures for these vehicles with Chinese automakers in China, and Nissan's already exporting or planning to export their Chinese-built vehicles to other markets. Could some of those eventually come here? We'll see. Time will tell. It's a heck of a lot cheaper to build vehicles over there in China. But even if we see more and more Chinese-built EVs flood into our market, or even plug-in hybrids, they will never qualify for the EV tax credit, which now requires vehicles to be built in North America, and their materials and battery minerals and components, they have to be sourced from free trade countries with the United States. So that those vehicles coming in from China will never qualify for the EV tax credit. But if they're so cheap to produce over there, because most of the lithium in the world is refined in China, and they have a lot of rare earth metals for their motors, etc., it just might be so much cheaper over there that they don't need to qualify for the EV tax credit to saturate our market at the lower end. and possibly the higher end one day as well. That's the thing. If these Chinese EVs are coming in with insane specs, better battery technology, they might even come in some of them could come in at a price for $100,000, and who cares at that point for an EV tax credit? They don't qualify, even if it's a truck or whatnot. So it's a fun developing situation going on with the automotive industry. I love the competition. I love the innovation of the Chinese automakers, and it's just the beginning. I love seeing crap hit the fan, and that's essentially what's going on. It's going to force all the Japanese automakers, all the domestic automakers, all the German automakers, all the European automakers to get better, to get smarter. And if there's an alliance going on with the Chinese automakers, maybe we'll see an alliance of all the Japanese automakers, of all the American automakers. Like, we're already seeing the traditional landscape of automakers completely get destroyed due to emissions regulations and just the high cost of developing vehicles, and also the introduction of new technologies completely transforming how vehicles are made and developed as well. So love the endless amounts of curveballs that the industry is constantly getting thrown at. And I just hope that we get more affordable vehicles right now. That's the biggest concern for me. We're going into uncertain times. We're going into more expensive vehicles than we've ever seen before. Interest rates are an all-time high. Maybe the Chinese can carve out their own niche by partnering with other automakers from around the world, import these vehicles in the United States for a lower price. It could happen. Not saying it's likely, but use your imagination, guys. Also, you guys down below in the comments, would you be interested in Chinese-built vehicles if they are built well, if they have great technology, if they have great specs, and are priced competitively, if not lower than competitive or traditional models that we're used to? Holy cow. I got to cut myself off. Too much caffeine, working out, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great day and peace.